The closest relationships often carry hidden tests meant to refine the faith of the chosen ones, and this truth unfolds in ways that are sometimes too deep to recognize in the moment. When you look back over your life, the moments of struggle, betrayal, or disappointment almost always come from the people you trusted most, the ones you opened your heart to, the ones you thought would never hurt you, and yet God allows these moments not to destroy your spirit but to strengthen it, not to make you bitter but to make you wiser, not to separate you from love but to redirect your love towards Him and His purpose for your life. The chosen ones are never tested lightly, their trials are intentional and purposeful, and the most powerful shaping happens through the intimacy of close connections. Imagine a blacksmith who places the strongest steel into the hottest fire because he knows it can withstand the intensity and come out sharper, stronger, more valuable. In the same way, God places His chosen into the fire of relationships, allowing the heat of betrayal, misunderstanding, jealousy, or even silence to mold and transform them into people who walk not by sight but by faith, who depend not on the approval of others but on the direction of God alone. When God selects someone for a greater purpose, He never leaves them where they are. He begins to strip away every false comfort, every attachment that might pull them away from their destiny, and many times those attachments are people they have loved, trusted, and given themselves to. It is easier to endure hardship from a stranger, but when hardship comes from someone close, the lesson cuts deeper, it pierces the heart, and that pain is what refines the chosen. The chosen ones must understand that the pain inflicted by close relationships is not random, it is not meaningless, it is not wasted, but it is a divine classroom where faith is tested, loyalty to God is strengthened, and discernment is sharpened. The enemy often uses those closest to you to break you, but God allows it because He knows that what was meant to destroy you will actually prepare you. Every tear becomes a seed of strength, every wound becomes a place where God pours His healing oil, every rejection becomes a doorway to redirection, and every disappointment becomes evidence that your trust must shift from human reliability to divine providence. Sometimes the chosen ones wonder why they attract so much opposition even from their own family, why they are misunderstood by those who should know their hearts, why they are rejected when all they wanted to do was love and uplift, but the answer lies in the mystery of spiritual testing. God knows that the chosen cannot be elevated until they learn how to endure being misunderstood, misrepresented, and mistreated without losing their character, without turning bitter, without seeking revenge, and without abandoning the path He has placed before them. These tests are not meant to reveal weakness but to build resilience, not meant to push the chosen away from love but to teach them the higher form of love, the kind of love that forgives 70 times 7, the kind of love that prays for those who hurt you, the kind of love that looks like Christ when He was betrayed by Judas, denied by Peter, and abandoned by His disciples, yet still fulfilled His purpose. In the life of the chosen ones, the betrayal of a loved one is often the bridge to destiny. Joseph's story in the Bible is the perfect example, for it was not strangers who sold him into slavery but his own brothers, the ones who should have protected him, celebrated him, stood beside him. Yet through their jealousy and betrayal, Joseph was sent into Egypt, where the very pain of rejection became the pathway to power, and years later those same brothers bowed before him not out of fear but because God had elevated him through the very trial they created. The chosen ones must see that what feels like a devastating loss in the moment is often a divine rearrangement, a repositioning that aligns them with the greater plan. Those closest to you may hurt you, but it is through their actions that you are pushed into prayer, driven into solitude, and forced into seeking God in ways you never would have if life had remained comfortable. The testing of the chosen is never surface level because their calling is not surface level. God does not waste time refining those who are not destined for greatness. He pours His refining fire upon the chosen ones because their lives are meant to carry a light that others cannot bear, a mission that requires strength beyond human understanding, a faith that will not crumble under pressure. The ones closest to you are allowed to test you because their words have weight, their actions carry emotional force, and if you can endure that fire without losing your focus, then you are ready for the greater weight of glory that God intends to place upon your shoulders. Many people ask why their spiritual journey feels so lonely, why those they counted on the most seem to turn away when they need them most, but the truth is that this loneliness is a womb for transformation. It is in the absence of human support that divine strength becomes your foundation. It is in the silence of human encouragement that the voice of God grows louder. It is in the rejection of others that you are embraced by the arms of the Father, and it is in the loss of familiar comfort that you step into unfamiliar faith. Every chosen one must face seasons where the closest relationships reveal hidden tests. It may be through betrayal, where someone you trusted with your secrets uses them against you, or it may be through rejection, where someone you gave unconditional love refuses to see your worth, or it may be through jealousy, where someone you thought was for you cannot stand to see you rise, or it may be through neglect, where those you supported the most cannot show up for you in your time of need. Each of these experiences leaves scars, but those scars are proof of survival, proof of resilience, proof that you endured the fire and came out refined. God does not allow these things to make you question your value but to make you anchor your value in Him alone. If people never let you down, you might continue to lean on them as your source, but when they do, you are reminded that God is your provider, your healer, your defender, your guide, and your sustainer. The chosen ones learn that not every battle needs a response, not every betrayal needs confrontation, not every rejection needs explanation. Some battles are fought in silence, some are won through prayer, some are endured through patience, and some are surrendered entirely to God. When the chosen ones realize that the test is not about the other person but about their own faith, character, and endurance, they begin to walk differently. They stop being surprised by betrayal, they stop being crushed by rejection, they stop being discouraged by jealousy, because they understand that it is all part of the refining process. They begin to see that the ones closest to them are not enemies but instruments, that the pain they caused is not random but purposeful, and that behind every test lies the hand of God directing them closer to destiny. This process is not easy, and at times it feels unbearable, but the chosen must remember that the fire will not consume them, it will only refine them. The same God who allowed the test also set boundaries around it, ensuring that it will not break you beyond repair. He knows how much you can carry, He knows the strength He has placed within you, and He knows the victory that awaits you on the other side of the trial. The closest relationships may bring the heaviest tests, but they also bring the greatest revelations. Through them you learn who you are in God, you learn the depth of your resilience, you learn the necessity of discernment, and you learn the value of unconditional forgiveness. These lessons cannot be taught through comfort, they can only be revealed through trial. When you are chosen, your heart becomes the field where God plants His greatest seeds, and those seeds often sprout through tears, through disappointment, through heartbreak. The soil of suffering becomes the ground of strength, and the water of tears becomes the nourishment for wisdom. Every chosen one will look back one day and realize that the very people who hurt them were the very people God used to push them into destiny. The closest relationships often carry hidden tests, and though the pain of them may feel overwhelming in the moment, they are the divine tools God uses to refine, reshape, and prepare His chosen for the greatness that lies ahead. Betrayal, rejection, or misunderstanding from loved ones are signs of divine preparation, not destruction, because the chosen ones are not called to an ordinary journey but to a path that requires extraordinary endurance, faith, and inner strength. The trials that hurt the most often come through the people who are closest to your heart, and that pain is not a punishment but a spiritual shaping. When someone you trust betrays you, when someone you love rejects you, or when someone you have sacrificed for misunderstands your intentions, it feels like a deep wound that shakes your soul, yet beneath that wound lies the hand of God preparing you for a higher purpose. It is never easy to grasp this in the moment because the emotions are raw, the tears are real, the silence feels heavy, and the disappointment lingers, but the chosen ones must realize that what feels like devastation is actually transformation in disguise. The chosen ones are like clay in the hands of a potter, and the pressure of betrayal, the heat of rejection, and the friction of misunderstanding are tools used to mold them into vessels that can carry the weight of divine destiny. The story of spiritual preparation has always been marked by suffering that comes through relationships. Look at David, anointed as king, yet rejected by Saul who once embraced him, misunderstood by his brothers who belittled him, betrayed later by his own son Absalom. Each rejection and betrayal was not the end of David's story but a stepping stone towards his destiny. God allowed those moments not to destroy him but to shape his heart into a man after God's own heart. The chosen ones today walk the same path. The people they love may not see their worth, their intentions may be misinterpreted, their character may be questioned, and their loyalty may be doubted, yet through these very experiences God is chiseling away pride, teaching humility, cultivating patience, and creating in them a spirit that does not depend on human approval but on divine direction. The wound inflicted by betrayal is sharp, but it forces the chosen one to draw closer to God for comfort. The sting of rejection is painful, but it compels the chosen to anchor their identity in God's affirmation. The frustration of misunderstanding is exhausting, but it teaches the chosen to speak less and pray more, to explain less and trust God more, to realize that silence in the face of false accusations is sometimes the loudest testimony of faith. Betrayal has a unique power to break illusions. When a loved one turns against you, it shatters the image you had of them, and though that shattering is painful, it reveals truths you would not have seen otherwise. It uncovers jealousy, envy, hidden resentment, or fragile loyalty, and though your heart aches at the discovery, God uses it to separate you from relationships that cannot walk with you into the next season. Betrayal exposes where trust was misplaced, and once revealed, you are forced to depend less on man and more on God. Think of Jesus at the Last Supper, sitting across from Judas, fully aware of the betrayal that was about to unfold, yet he did not fight it, did not escape it, did not attempt to control it, because he knew the betrayal was part of the divine preparation for his destiny. Without Judas there would be no cross, without the cross there would be no resurrection, and without the resurrection there would be no salvation. What looked like destruction was actually the path to eternal victory. For the chosen ones, betrayal operates in the same way. It hurts, it breaks, but it also builds, it pushes, it directs, and it becomes a tool in the hands of God to refine the spirit for greater things. Rejection is another painful teacher in the journey of the chosen. Rejection from loved ones is not just about being excluded, it is about feeling invisible, feeling unworthy, feeling as though all you gave was not enough. Yet rejection is often divine protection in disguise. When doors close that you desperately wanted open, when people you wanted to hold on to walk away, when love you poured out is not reciprocated, it feels like devastation, but in reality, it is redirection. God allows rejection because He sees ahead what you cannot see. He knows that certain people cannot handle your destiny, certain circles cannot contain your growth, and certain relationships will suffocate the calling He has placed within you. Rejection hurts because it comes from those you wanted acceptance from the most, but it is also a sign that God is preparing you for a season where His acceptance is all you need. When the chosen learn to embrace rejection as divine preparation, they stop chasing after people who walked away, they stop begging for love that was never meant to stay, and they start walking boldly into the spaces where God has created room for them. Misunderstanding may be the most frustrating of all because it often comes when you are trying your best to love, to give, to be honest, and yet your words are twisted, your intentions are questioned, your motives are doubted. Loved ones may see you through the lens of their own insecurity or jealousy, and no matter how much you try to explain yourself, they are unwilling to see the truth. Misunderstanding drains the soul because it makes you feel unheard, unseen, unappreciated. Yet even here God is at work. Misunderstanding forces the chosen to rely less on explanations and more on example, less on convincing and more on consistent character. It teaches the chosen that sometimes no amount of words will change perception, and the only true vindication comes from God. Misunderstanding sharpens discernment, teaching you when to speak, when to be silent, and when to walk away. It builds inner resilience because you learn not to be controlled by the opinions of others but to stand firm in your truth, even if no one else sees it. Each of these experiences, betrayal, rejection, misunderstanding, becomes a spiritual classroom where the chosen are prepared for their calling. They strip away false dependencies, they reveal hidden weaknesses, they strengthen faith muscles, and they prepare the chosen to handle greater responsibility. If you can endure betrayal without losing compassion, if you can endure rejection without losing self-worth, if you can endure misunderstanding without losing your peace, then you are ready to step into the role God has designed for you. Divine preparation requires endurance, and endurance is built through trials that strike the deepest places of your heart. The chosen ones are prepared not in comfort but in conflict, not in applause but in adversity, not in acceptance but in rejection, not in loyalty but in betrayal, and not in perfect understanding but in painful misunderstanding. The truth is that if every relationship supported you, if every loved one encouraged you, if every friend celebrated you, your faith would remain shallow, your discernment would remain undeveloped, and your reliance on God would remain weak. But when those closest to you wound you, when the people you expected to be your foundation crumble beneath your feet, you are forced to stand on the unshakable rock of God's word. That is preparation. That is refinement. That is divine construction of inner strength. The chosen ones are not destroyed by these experiences, they are built by them. They become wiser, stronger, more compassionate, more discerning, and more aligned with their divine purpose. Throughout history, every chosen figure endured these trials. Joseph betrayed by his brothers, Moses doubted by his own people, David rejected by Saul, Jeremiah misunderstood by his community, Jesus betrayed by Judas and denied by Peter. The pattern is clear. Great callings demand great preparation, and great preparation often comes through the sharp edges of human relationships. If God allowed His own Son to walk through betrayal, rejection, and misunderstanding as part of the path to glory, then surely the chosen ones today cannot expect to escape the same process. The chosen must understand that this is not the end of them, it is the beginning of their transformation. The emotional toll of betrayal, rejection, and misunderstanding cannot be minimized. It leaves scars that take time to heal, it creates questions that seem unanswered, it births seasons of loneliness where you wonder if anyone truly understands you. But in those moments God is near, whispering that this is not destruction, this is preparation. This is Him building resilience in you, this is Him teaching you to lean on Him alone, this is Him shaping your heart so that when you rise with humility, with compassion, with wisdom, with strength that is not superficial but forged in the fire of adversity. That strength will not only carry you but will inspire others who face the same struggles, because you will be able to speak from experience, to comfort from understanding, to guide from the scars that now hold stories of survival and transformation. The chosen must remember that betrayal is not a sign of abandonment by God but alignment with His plan, rejection is not proof of worthlessness but evidence of divine redirection, and misunderstanding is not a verdict against your character but a stage in your refinement. These are the hallmarks of divine preparation, the signs that God is setting you apart for something greater, the reminders that your destiny requires a stronger foundation than ordinary lives ever will. The chosen do not crumble under these tests, they rise from them, shaped, refined, purified, and made ready for the weight of glory ahead. God allows these trials through the closest people to strengthen discernment, endurance, and spiritual growth, because the journey of the chosen ones cannot be built on shallow foundations or temporary strength. When you are marked for a divine assignment, ordinary preparation will not suffice, so the very relationships you thought were meant only for comfort and companionship become vessels of lessons that cut deeper than anything else could. The misunderstandings from a parent, the jealousy from a sibling, the betrayal from a friend, or the rejection from someone you loved with your whole heart are not accidents in the life of the chosen. They are chisels in the hand of the Creator, shaping your character and refining your vision. God knows that the chosen cannot be elevated until they have learned to see beyond appearances, to sense the hidden motives of people, to discern between genuine loyalty and empty flattery. That kind of spiritual sight cannot be learned in a textbook or sermon alone, it must be experienced through trials that expose what words could never reveal. Discernment grows strongest when you are forced to read between the lines of behavior, when you feel the sting of someone smiling at you in public but speaking against you in private, when you notice the subtle envy hiding behind compliments, when you sense the heaviness in conversations that once felt light. These painful experiences awaken your spirit to notice patterns, to see beyond the surface, to recognize the unseen battle in the spiritual realm. Discernment matures in the soil of betrayal, because when you have been deceived once, you learn to lean on the whisper of the Holy Spirit before trusting blindly again. It matures in the soil of rejection, because when you have been excluded without reason, you learn to discern where God's presence actually dwells, and you stop wasting time seeking validation from places where His Spirit does not reside. Discernment matures in the soil of misunderstanding, because when you have been falsely accused, you learn to listen more carefully to what God says about you instead of defending yourself endlessly before people who will never understand your calling. Endurance is another fruit of these relational trials, and endurance is not something that can be gifted, it must be built. To endure means to stand strong when the weight feels unbearable, to hold faith when your heart is heavy with disappointment, to keep walking when those you expected to walk with you have left. Endurance is the strength to continue trusting God when everything in your life seems to contradict His promises. The closest relationships test endurance in ways nothing else can, because when a stranger offends you, you can brush it off, but when someone you love wounds you, it shakes you to your core. Still, God uses that pain as resistance training for your faith, just as weights strengthen the body by providing opposition. Each trial is a weight, and each tear is proof that your endurance is being stretched and strengthened. The chosen ones are called to carry burdens others cannot, to withstand storms that would crush ordinary people, and that kind of strength can only be built through endurance that comes from heartbreak, disappointment, and loss. Spiritual growth thrives in this same soil of suffering. If life were easy, if every relationship went smoothly, if everyone celebrated you, your spirit would remain stagnant, your faith would remain untested, your growth would remain shallow. But when those closest to you hurt you, you are forced to pray deeper prayers, to cry out from the depths of your soul, to seek God's wisdom with desperation. In those moments your faith is no longer theoretical, it becomes experiential. You begin to know God as healer when you need healing, as comforter when you are broken, as defender when you are falsely accused, as friend when you are abandoned, as father when you feel orphaned by rejection. Each trial presses you into a deeper relationship with Him, and each wound becomes an entry point for His presence to fill. The chosen ones discover that pain becomes the birthplace of revelation, that loss becomes the soil of intimacy with God, and that betrayal becomes the threshold of new dimensions of spiritual authority. These trials also break the illusions of self-sufficiency. Many chosen ones enter seasons thinking they can rely on their own wisdom, their own strength, their own ability to discern who to trust, but God allows betrayal or misunderstanding to humble them, to show them that human judgment alone is fragile and that divine guidance is essential. Through this breaking, pride is stripped away, leaving behind a spirit that is teachable, surrendered, and ready for God to pour His wisdom. The chosen learn that strength is not found in their ability to control people or outcomes, but in their ability to release people into God's hands and trust His sovereignty over every situation. This is spiritual growth at its highest, learning to let go, to forgive, to release bitterness, to keep moving without carrying the weight of resentment. Forgiveness itself is one of the greatest fruits of these trials, because it frees the chosen from chains of the past and allows them to walk into the future unburdened. Every chosen one who has endured these painful lessons emerges with a deeper compassion for others. When you have felt betrayal, you can comfort others who have been betrayed. When you have endured rejection, you can embrace those who feel abandoned. When you have been misunderstood, you can stand with those whose voices are silenced. These trials expand your heart, not shrink it, because while the enemy intends for the pain to make you bitter, God uses it to make you tender. The chosen ones become vessels of healing precisely because they have been wounded. They carry a depth of understanding that cannot be faked, and that authenticity is what gives their words power and their presence comfort. The chosen ones also learn patience in these seasons, because growth does not happen overnight. It takes time for wounds to heal, time for discernment to sharpen, time for endurance to build, time for wisdom to mature. God allows the process to unfold gradually, because quick elevation without deep preparation would destroy rather than bless. Patience is forged when you want deliverance immediately but God says wait, when you want vindication instantly but God says trust, when you want reconciliation on your timeline but God says my timing is better. Waiting in the tension between promise and fulfillment stretches patience, and patience becomes the quiet strength of the chosen. Another dimension of growth through these relational trials is learning to love without expectation. The chosen ones are often called to give love even when it is not returned, to serve even when it is not appreciated, to forgive even when no apology is given. This is not weakness, it is strength of the highest order, because it mirrors the love of Christ himself. To love unconditionally in the face of betrayal, rejection, or misunderstanding is to reflect the divine nature that dwells within. This is why the chosen cannot escape such trials, because without them, love would remain conditional, shallow, and fragile. Through them, love is purified, strengthened, and made unshakable. The chosen ones discover that discernment is not just about seeing what others do, but about perceiving what God is doing through it. Endurance is not just about surviving the trial, but about thriving in it, becoming stronger because of it. Spiritual growth is not just about acquiring knowledge, but about embodying wisdom, compassion, and faith at a level that cannot be shaken. This entire process is not meant to destroy, but to elevate. God allows these tests because He knows the greatness of the destiny waiting on the other side. He knows that without the breaking there can be no building, without the refining there can be no shining, without the pressing there can be no anointing. So when betrayal pierces your heart, when rejection leaves you empty, when misunderstanding leaves you weary, remember that these are not signs of your end but signs of your preparation. They are markers on the road of the chosen, reminders that God's hand is on you, shaping you, guiding you, strengthening you for something beyond what you can see. The pain is real, but so is the purpose. The wounds are deep, but so is the glory that will flow from them. The chosen ones are not defined by what they suffer, but by how they rise through it. They are refined by fire, but not consumed. They are pressed, but not destroyed. They are tested, but also trusted. Trusted with greater wisdom, greater strength, and greater purpose. And this is why God allows these trials through the closest people to strengthen discernment, endurance, and spiritual growth, because without them you would never step fully into who you were created to be, without them you would never develop the eyes to see beyond deception, without them you would never have the strength to carry the weight of destiny, without them you would never cultivate the spiritual depth needed to walk in your divine calling, and without them you would never become the chosen one He designed you to be.